What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Push the Tempo podcast. It's been a couple days since it's been like a week since we recorded, and we just want to get back to you guys because both of our teams, the Clippers and the Celtics, just played another game. As usual, it was a great game. Came down to the wire. Celtics ended up winning 117 to 112, and we figured we'd do similar to what we did last time. We just talk about both these teams, talk about this game first, and then talk about both these teams. We're probably going to spend a little bit more time with the Celtics, considering they've been struggling as of late. So, with that being said, Ari, I'll hand it over to you. What did you think about this game?
Honestly, I was disappointed. Same thing as the last time they faced off. Both teams didn't have both in every single one of their players. Kawhi was a late scratch with back spasms. And of course, on the Celtics side, they didn't have their heart and soul, Marcus Smart. And, with these injuries is kind of annoying because last year, and I've said this in the last podcast too, those matchups were just that amazing. And I was really looking forward to today or when that game happened. And this is not what I was expecting. Regardless, Celtics are 2-0 this year against the Clippers, so I guess I can't really complain.
Yeah, like you said, these games are always fun and they're always close. And with Kawhi, he was a very, very late scratch. Like I think we found out right when starting lineups were being introduced that he wouldn't be playing, and like a bunch of people were freaking out, myself included. I was like, "What the hell's going on?" And then we found out, I think in the second or third quarter, that he was out because of back spasms. Because initially they said that there's a chance he could play in that game, and then he just ended up not playing. So for the Celtics side, Kemba Walker, I thought he had a pretty good game. Finished with 25 points on 19 shots. Um, the Clippers continue to struggle to guard these small guards. Kemba was pretty good in the first matchup as well. Um, De'Aaron Fox, Kemba, Kyrie, Colin Sexton, a lot of these smaller guards have really given the Clippers problems this year. I thought Robert Williams, I thought he had a pretty big impact on this game because whenever the Clippers would kind of drop, when they would play up on the screen with whoever was guarding the pick and roll, Robert Williams would just jump and get any alley oop or whatever. He had this dunk over Zubac. I think you know what I'm talking about. I thought he had a pretty big impact. Jason Tatum wasn't that great until like the fourth quarter. That's when I thought he really turned it on. But all in all, I thought the Celtics played a good game. Some of the Clippers players struggled, particularly Lou Williams continues to suck against good teams. But that's just my opinion. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. To be honest, I think Rob Williams was a huge X factor in getting this win over the Clippers. And on top of that, I'm kind of surprised in Kemba. He's showing a lot more consistency over the last few games. And I was kind of hating on him. So, I mean, shout out to Kemba for, showing more consistency. And like you said, Tatum and Brown just haven't been as amazing in that game, at least. And, Tatum as of late hasn't been the Tatum, the All Star that we know. He did say he was dealing with some issues due to illness, but I mean, it's been a few weeks after, and I guess there is some lingering issues. But I mean, who knows? But on the Clippers side, I was honestly impressed with Reggie Jackson, and I did not expect myself to say that, but he had a really efficient game. I mean, although he wasn't really the best defensively, he was putting up numbers in the offensive end. And I mean, it makes sense because he's kind of covering for the loss of Kawhi. And that's when I really realized like the death on the Clippers isn't as nice as I thought it would be. Like, yeah, Paul George is insane. And, like I said, he's a great player. And I thought he had a potential chance of being MVP. I mean, I was overstating a little bit, but I mean, yeah, other than that, I mean, Marcus Morris and Lou Williams are two guys that are supposed to be great offensive threats, but they're guys that haven't really showed up. And I mean, I don't really watch that many Clipper games, but in this game, at least they were kind of a non-factor in this game.
See, I don't blame Marcus Morris because you got to remember he got hurt. He took that elbow. I think it was from like Jalen Brown, and then he was
Mm,
out the rest of the game,
that's true.
and he ended up being diagnosed with a concussion, so he's probably out until after the All Star break. Lou Williams though, I see. I've never been worried about Lou Williams versus bad teams and in the regular season, but come playoff time, these 4 for 13 nights, 3 of 15, whatever, they become a lot more common for him. He's a bad playoff player, and I've said this for the longest time that he's just not a guy that you have on a championship caliber team because he's bad defensively, and if he's not scoring, He doesn't really offer you much else besides the threat of a like besides like the spacing threat. I thought Paul George had a great game besides the fourth quarter, and that's been a problem for the Clippers in its entirety. Clutch play particularly has been an issue, and we'll get into that a little bit later on. But no, you're definitely right, man. Reggie Jackson, I didn't expect this from him. I expected maybe just like 10 to 15 points at most, and some shaky defense. We got the shaky defense, but 25 points on 14 attempts, 5 of 6 from three. Reggie Jackson, I was a guy that didn't necessarily want him on the team or playing good minutes, but he's contributing positively for the most part, and he's really been put in a position where he didn't even know he was going to start until he was told, "Hey, you're going to be starting. Kawhi's not playing, at least to start the game." And he stepped up. He stepped in the lineup and stepped up big. So, props to Reggie. He had a great game, and yeah, that's really all I have to say. I just
Mm.
wish they played better in the clutch, which we can talk about later.
Yeah, now I got a question for you. All right, at this point in time, are you taking Reggie Jackson over Lou Will?
Man, see that's very tough because the idea of Lou Will is obviously better. Lou William is he's probably a better player than Reggie, but uh, man, I don't know if I have an answer to that question, to be completely honest. And it's kind of sad that I'm saying that because last year, if you had asked me that, I would have said Lou Williams right away. But against these good teams, he struggles. Like he struggled versus the Celtics, he struggled versus the Bucks. Um, he's had his issues versus like the other good teams. So I don't know, man. That's a question that you put me right on the spot, and I don't think I have an answer for.
No, that's fair. I mean, honestly, this has probably been one of Lou Will's down years, like one of his really bad years compared to some of the others. And honestly, he's kind of digressed a lot. And I'm just taking a look at the over his career trajectory. I mean, he went from 20 points 2 seasons ago to like 16, 18 ish, and then now to 12. So, I mean, it's a huge drop off for a guy like Lou. And, I feel like that could be a problem with the Clippers in the future.
See, that this is where I disagree. See, I think the reason he's dropped off with like his scoring averages and such is he's playing in a new system where the team emphasizes ball movement and such. Because this year I think they're really getting their assist totals up, but he's just been playing in a different system. But that's never been my concern with him scoring. It's more everything else. Like he can pass, sure, but defense is awful. He doesn't contribute anything on that end. And you saw it in this game. There was moments where he caught the ball, he would stop, and like the possessions would just turn into nothingness. You know what I mean? And if he's not scoring, he doesn't give you anything else. Uh,
Okay, that's definitely a fair point. Yeah, and on top of that, he's not playing as much as before either. And yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, no, I have to agree with you. But
but
yo,
can we talk about Robert Williams though?
dude,
I
honestly,
thought Robert
man.
Williams was awesome in this game. Like he's a guy that he could have been a lottery pick in his draft, but ended up falling because of some injury issues. But he
Mhm.
came into this game and he had a huge impact. He was defending, he was rebounding. He had 4 assists. He was catching lobs. Like I thought he was really good in this game. Tristan Thompson was good to start. Like he was getting some rebounds. But I thought Robert Williams in total was the Celtics' best big man in this game.
Yeah, it's honestly really exciting to see if he plays tonight, which is Thursday against the Raptors. This will be the first time in his career where he plays more than 10 games in a row, which is a huge thing for him. It's a big deal just because he has a pretty big history with injuries, and for him to be able to play more than 10 games straight is a big achievement for him at least. It gives him a little bit trade value too, but I mean we're not going to hop into that right now. But honestly, he just has so much athleticism. His bounce is there. And one of the problems early on in his career was, I mean, he was kind of lost. Funny story, he missed his like opening rookie, something like that, like an interview because he overslept, and then he like missed his flight or something funny like that. And then a lot of times, like he kind of looks lost on the court, but other than that, he's shown so much more awareness compared to his rookie season, and he's just playing super well. He's doing everything you could ask for in a big man. He's keeping up with smaller guards. He's blocking shots. He's getting tough rebounds. He's going up for second chance shots, and pretty much anything you can ask for.
Yeah, he's a guy that he's pretty interesting, because he's still so young and he offers so much upside. It just like the defense sometimes with him can be a little like lackluster, but if he can ever like figure it out on that end, I think he can be a legit rotation player and be like the legit player for the Celtics moving forward, like at their center position. So I thought he was really good. Peyton Pritchard had some moments in this game where the Clippers would play off of him. He would catch wide open shots and hit them. 4 of 7 from three. Some of those shots were pretty big shots in that game. And yeah, that Jalen Brown, I thought Jalen Brown was okay. He didn't really have that much of an impact. I mean, I know he scored
Yeah,
18 points, but
he was coming off an injury, so I didn't really
right,
expect too much from him. He came into that game questionable with the like knee soreness or something like that.
yeah,
But yeah, yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. And one other point I want to just point out for that game is, I noticed the Celtics are starting to do a little bit more center by committee. They're kind of switching off between Tice, Tristan Thompson, and Robert Williams. I don't know if you've seen it within this game, but like every time Ibaka would come in, it wouldn't be Tristan Thompson in the game, and it would just basically just be rotating and depending on matchups, which I think is pretty cool, a new thing that the Celtics are trying out, and I think it's pretty interesting.
yeah. I thought Ibaka was all right in this game. Um, Nothing special, I would say. 7 points on 3 of 9 shooting. I thought Zubats though, even though his plus minus is really bad, -19, I thought he was pretty good. 8 points, 10 rebounds, 3 assists. I thought he had a better game than Ibaka, even though the plus minus won't show it. But he has to really cover up for the bad defenders in the back lineup. Like for example, Luke Kennard, who's been out of the rotation as of late. One of the things that the Clippers did in the first 10 games of the season was play a Lou Williams, Reggie Jackson, and Luke Kennard lineup. And that lineup would just get killed defensively, even with Zubats in it, because he just has to cover up for those three guys. In this game, I'm not sure if it was Lou Williams, Reggie Jackson, or Luke Kennard, but I know for sure it was Terrence Mann, Lou Williams, and Luke Kennard. I'm sorry. And those three just weren't really cutting it defensively. And that's one of the main reasons that why I think Zubats' plus minus was so bad. But I thought overall he was pretty solid in this game as well. But no, you're definitely right. The Celtics center rotation is still pretty interesting. There have been rumors that the Celtics have been interested in various players and have been dangling Tristan Thompson out as like a trade piece. So it remains to be seen what they do. They obviously have that huge trade exception that we can talk about later if we want. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the Celtics do moving forward.
All right, from here, do you want to hop into the Clippers' future or anything about the Clippers?
Yeah. So obviously the Clippers so far this season, I think right now, as of last night, the Lakers losing to the Kings, they are third in the Western Conference. 2 days after the loss to the Celtics, they fell to fourth, but they're basically tied for third with the Lakers right behind the Suns and the Jazz. I'm not really too worried about anything about the Clippers besides the clutch play so far this year, and it has to be stated that the Clippers are tied with the Bucks for the second least minutes played in the clutch this year, right in front of the Jet. Right, so second least meaning that they've played 41 minutes in the clutch, which is the second least tied with the Bucks, and then they've played, and the team right under them is the Jazz, who have the best record in the league. Um, but in those minutes, they have not been playing well. I would say they have one of the worst defensive. They have the worst defensive rating in the clutch in the NBA, and they have one of the worst offensive ratings. They have the 18th offensive rating. Um, it doesn't make for great clutch basketball. And off the top of my head, I can't think of more than 2 games that they've won in the clutch. They won one game versus Utah, and then one game versus Phoenix, where they blew like a 30-point lead, and they ended up winning at the end. But outside of that, they've lost to the Nets twice in the clutch. They lost to the Celtics twice. They lost to the Kings. Um, the execution there just hasn't been great, and it's something that I hope they can turn around and fix coming out of the All Star break, because it's just been an issue. Granted, they haven't played a lot, but it's just something I hope they can get figured out.
Damn, it's kind of funny because I was gonna say the same thing about the Celtics. They're not so great in the clutch this year either. So I mean, who knows? Maybe two bad teams in the clutch kind of cancels out. But yo, I mean, aside from that, I think the Clippers are fine. I'm not too worried about them. They were my championship prediction team, and I'm gonna still stand by that. Their team just hasn't been healthy all season, like fully yet. I mean, Kawhi's been in and out. Paul George has been in and out. I mean, we haven't really seen this full team. You know what I mean? So not too concerned. Third seed is not bad at all. I mean, especially in the Western Conference. And I think by the end of the year, they'll probably finish within the second or third seed, anyways. Not too worried about this team.
Yeah, I want to say the same thing, but like I said earlier, the guard rotation is very suspect to me. Um, not in terms of they need a point guard to really to like get them easy shots in the clutch, because that at the end of the day, that's what your best players are for. That's what Paul George and Kawhi Leonard have to do, and Paul George and Kawhi Leonard have also been really bad in the clutch this year. Granted, again, very small sample size, but I think Kawhi's shooting 28% from the field, 0% from three, and either 77 or 87% from the line. And I mean, it's the most Clippers thing ever when one of the more clutch players in the league comes to your team and forgets how to play clutch. So not great, but like I said, very small sample size. Hope they can turn it around. Paul George has also struggled. I don't know his numbers off the top of my head, but he wasn't great in the fourth quarter versus Boston. He was really good in the first three quarters. In the first half, particularly, I think he finished like 21 or 22 points, but there was just some egregious shot selection. That pull up three, I think it was over Kemba, and he had another bad 3 point shot attempt that he took. Not great. Finished 2 of 10 in the fourth, and I just hope they can figure it out. And the guard rotation, like I said earlier, every guard after Patrick Beverly, who's injury prone, sucks on defense, and they're gonna be a they're gonna be a guy who's gonna they're going to be hunted out in the playoff matchups. So that's really my only concern for them is the guard rotation could use some defensive upgrades.
All right. I know I asked you this before. On the last podcast, we talked about these two teams. You still taking Kyle Lowry or not?
Man, they're there's no way that they can get him. There's just no way because they don't have the assets. The only way that they would get Kyle Lowry is if Kyle Lowry straight up said that I want to be traded and the only team I want to go to is the Clippers. Otherwise there's no other way because they don't have any assets that the Raptors would want. The most intriguing player they have is Zubats, and that's only because he's on a relatively a team friendly contract and they need another center because Aaron Baines sucks and Chris Boucher is their only other viable big man, and he's still very slight. But outside of that, like what else do the Clippers have that they would want? Luke Kennard, who's getting paid 16 million a year to clap on the bench. Lou Williams, who's on an expiring, who's probably going to retire pretty soon. Patrick Beverly, like there's no the Raptors have no incentive to trade Lowry to the Clippers. Like absolutely no incentive. So I doubt it happens.
Yeah, no, no. Okay, that's fair. Yeah, no, I kind of agree with that. I mean, who knows? These last minute trades can be wild. So, I mean, you can sit and cross your fingers and hope for it. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, with that, you want to hop into the Celtics because I got a lot of shit to talk about.
Yeah, why don't you start off? What's been going on with the Celtics? Why have they kind of struggled to meet expectations this year?
Okay, so if you remember the beginning of the season, they started off really hot, and this is without Kemba Walker. And I'm not saying that they were losing because of Kemba Walker, but I'm gonna say that there's one factor, there's something that stands out, and that is my boy Marcus Smart has not been playing in these games. And they started off, I believe they had they were on top of the Eastern Conference, and at one point even the NBA. And of course, it was a small sample size, but once Marcus Smart went out, they haven't won many games at all. I believe they're like 5 for 16. I'd have to double check that. 5 out of 16, something like that. But they've been losing a ton of games since Marcus Smart's been out. And one of the factors that I noticed is that Marcus Smart is their best playmaker on that team. And I'm not even trying to hop on because you guys know that I love my Marcus Smart, but
No, you're right. He is.
Yeah, but with that being said, I mean the Celtics have zero ball movement without Marcus Smart, and Marcus Smart's not even the best point guard in the world. And this is me being a huge bias fan, but when he's on the game, when he's on the court, he's making plays. He's that this team is moving. Marcus Smart to Jalen Brown was the number one assisted duo in the NBA until Marcus Smart got injured, which just shows that there's so much more ball movement than there is now currently. Kemba Walker is a point guard, but he's not exactly the type of playmaker. He's more of a scorer. And the Celtics just look frozen on the court when, Jason Tatum is isoing or Jalen Brown's making a move or Kemba's coming off a pick and roll or something like that. There's not that type of ball movement. It's pretty predictable. You know what's going to happen, and there's just a lack of playmaking with Marcus Smart out. And on top of that, there's also a lack of intensity. You can see it clearly on the Celtics team. There's no more, I guess you could say, hustle or grit or anything like that when you watch the Celtics, especially late in the game. And they've been losing a lot of close games, not to even good teams, but to some bad teams too. That's like my
So
first. What's up?
so I'm gonna go off what you just said. While I do agree that Marcus Smart is a huge loss for them, because like you said, he's their best playmaker. He's a great defensive player, and like you said, he just brings the intensity for that team. Um, it's in my opinion, it shouldn't have to be this way because the Celtics roster is so thin that when one Marcus Smart is out, and there's some games that, for example, Kemba has missed some games because of injury management for his knee. Like the roster's so thin that they have to play some guys like who should be in the G League. Like they got to play with Javante Green, Aaron Neesmith, Carson Edwards. Like none of these guys are really NBA players that you want to put on the court and that you're comfortable with winning those minutes. You know what I mean? Like for example, in that Dallas game, like Kemba was out and they had to play those guys some big minutes and they ended up losing at the buzzer. Um, I think this is just a really bad job by Danny Ainge, particularly like the roster's not in the best shape out of the top four, top five or outside of like 5 or 6 guys. And one of the main reasons for that is that you brought in Kemba Walker. He's making 141 over 4 years, and Tatum and Brown are both on big contracts. I'm not even sure if Tatum's contract is kicked in yet, but those guys are on some huge deals, and that just makes it hard to really fill out the roster around them. But there's just not that many NBA ready players outside of like the top five or outside of like the top 5 to 7 players in the rotation. Going off what you said about the sorry, going off what you said about the ball movement and such, I think they put up a graphic in that Celtics and Clippers game that going into that game, if the Celtics were leading at halftime, if they were down at halftime, I'm sorry, they were 1-11 in games that they were down at halftime in, and the only 2 wins that they have both came against the Clippers, which is ironic. But um, one of the things I will say about the Celtics this year, I've caught a couple of their games, is that they really remind me of last year's Clippers in that there's not a lot of ball movement. There's a lot of stagnation on the offense, and you see just guys just standing around watching Tatum or Brown or Kemba Walker just get into their ISO moves and try to break people down off the dribble and make a play. And that's something that the Clippers did a lot last year. And in the regular season, most of the time it can work when you have guys who are as good as Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown and Kemba Walker. But come playoff time, it's really hard to win that way because you're not really generating easy shots out of that unless the defense is collapsing and you're hitting guys who can hit open shots. But on the Celtics, how many guys do you really trust to hit those open shots? Do you trust Semi Ojale? I don't think so. Do you trust Jeff Teague? Probably not. Do you Peyton Pritchard? Maybe, I guess. But there's not a lot of guys on this roster that you can really trust to do that come playoff time. You know what I mean?
And just hopping off that was exactly my reason. I was gonna hop into it. I was gonna say that with all the assisting and the no playmaking that's going on, there's only one person that you can really blame for the lack of depth on this team. And before we hop into that, let me just talk about one other thing real quick. So I was looking for this graphic while you were talking, and this was based on February 24th, so it's a little old. But when the Celtics have more than 25 assists per game, they're 8-1. When they have between 20 to 24, they're 5-8, and then when they have 19 or less, they're 2-7, which just proves that, there's a huge hole in this offensive scheme on this team. It's like you said, it's legit just all ISO, and you were right. It does kind of remind me of that Clippers team from last year. And one other thing, I know I'm like hyping up my boy Marcus Smart like that, but before he was injured, Tatum and Brown had better numbers in terms of efficiency. So if you look at it, Tatum averaged 26 and a half points, and then without Smart, he's averaging 24 and a half. Same thing with Brown, 27 points, and then since injury of Marcus Smart, 22 points. And then it's also showing on the field goal percentage. Tatum went from 48% to 39, and Brown went from 53 to 44. So I don't think that it's because of Marcus Smart, obviously, but it's because of playmaking. And the reason why is all the shots they're taking are super tough shots. They're not easy shots at all. And these are guys that can make these shots. So imagine players, like you said, this team is filled with two or three all-star players, and then they're filled with a bunch of G leaguers. And let's get right to the point. I think the biggest fault is Danny Ainge's fault because I mean, look at the roster he created. He had a great team. Like the Celtics were filled with death just a few years ago. Making that trade for Kyrie, honestly, I would agree with that move. I probably would have done it back then too if I was a GM. Making that move with Kemba Walker for Terry Rozier, that trade, and I know we talked about it last podcast. In hindsight, yeah, it was a terrible trade because Terry Rozier has been going off. But looking at it at the time, it could have been an okay trade. But where I really see fault is Danny Ainge not making any moves in this free agency when he had a chance to trade Gordon Hayward for Jeremy Lamb, and whoever else they were offering. I believe it was
I think it
Miles
was like
Turner was.
Miles Turner, and I think it was either Miles Turner and T.J. Warren, but then Ainge wanted like Miles Turner and Victor Oladipo or something like that.
Yeah, something crazy like that. Honestly, that trade now looks great, and Miles Turner has been awesome. He looks like just a player that the Celtics need. That is honestly annoying. And on top of that, he can't draft outside the top 10 in the first round. I mean, he's been a GM since 2003. Let's read some of his first round picks outside of the top 10. All right, so he's got Delonte West, Al Jefferson, who's Jalen Green. I mean, he's a role player. He got selected at the 18, so can't really complain. Jeff Green. Um, and I'm not going over the second round picks because I don't really consider that too significant. Avery Bradley's been Marshawn Brooks, Fab Mello, Jared Sullinger, Lucas Noguera, James Young. You know what I mean? And the list keeps going on. I mean, Marcus Smart was a sixth pick. Okay. RJ Hunter, 28th pick. Terry Rozier was the 16th. And he's probably the first guy that I read off this list outside the top 10 that's been pretty decent and had a great career so far. I mean, he's trending in the right direction. Then we've got Ante Zizic, 23rd pick. Gershon Yabusele, 16th pick. And of course, Jalen Brown's third pick. And he's been a great player. Jason Tatum, third pick, of course. Robert Williams is probably one of the only guys, him and Rozier, that have been okay outside of the top 10 pick. I mean, look, if you look at this year's draft, I mean, you got Aaron Neesmith, who's the 14th overall pick, and he doesn't even play. He's so I don't call him garbage. He's still young, but definitely not at the level of the NBA yet. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of frustration as a Celtics fan, and a lot of frustration is being directed to Danny Ainge. And if he doesn't make a move with that trade player exception, I think a lot of Celtics fans are going to be angry at him just because there's so much talk going on and not a lot of action.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see who they get. There was just a report earlier today that they were looking at Jeremy Grant, but I mean, what incentive do the Pistons have to trade Jeremy Grant? First year of his contract, he's playing pretty well for them, and 3 years, I think it's like 3 years, 60 or something like that for him. They just got him this year, and like we were talking about even last time, even I know the Pistons are in like a full rebuild right now, but which one of these Celtics young players are enticing enough for them to give up on Jeremy Grant, who's still relatively young himself? You know what I mean? Um, no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, honestly, you're 100% correct. I mean, you could take a long shot on Peyton Pritchard, who's been pretty good.
But
Probably one of.
he was like a 4 year college player. How much better
Yeah,
is he
yeah,
gonna get?
exactly. That is true. I was just thinking that the Pistons don't really have too much guard depth with Killian Hayes out. and Delon Wright. But I mean, yeah, no, you're right. 100% agree.
I just like I said, I think the Celtics really they really mirror what last year's Clippers team was like at the end of the game. Even this year's Clippers team, even though the Clippers suck in the clutch this year, they were good last year. But like it's just a lot of stagnation on offense, a lot of your turn, my turn. And like I said, it works in the regular season. But come playoff time when defenses lock in and you try to you try to play like that, like it usually doesn't work. I listened to the Zach Lowe podcast and he had Brian Scalabrine on, and he said that, and I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but Celtics are one of the worst teams in the league at generating open shots, and open shots are what are the best types of shots. You know what I mean? And at the end of the games, when it just digresses into guys getting in their bags and trying to make a play out of nothing, like it becomes very hard to win like that. So
Yeah,
I think the
no,
Celtics, I think they took a slight step back this year, but uh, most of it, most of it, in my opinion, is on, like I said, Danny Ainge. There's some things I think Brad Stevens could do better with his offense, but I mean, he's been given guys who, if they weren't on the Celtics roster, they'd probably be in the G League. And then some of them who he has to play when some of his players are out, like right now with Marcus Smart being out, like they're like, how much do you trust Semi Ojeleye to hit a corner three when it matters? Like,
honestly, I'm gonna be honest. For the first half of the season, I would not want it. I remember you asked me a few years ago when the Celtics were playing against the Bucks in the playoffs, and you're like, "Oh, who's the worst shooter on the Celtics from three?" And I was like, "Yo, Semi Ojeleye." But I mean, now he's been a lot more consistent. But no, I mean, yeah, 100%. You're correct. Honestly, outside of Tatum and Brown, I don't even trust Kemba sometimes taking these tough shots, and it's just frustrating as a Celtics fan. You know what I mean?
yeah, it remains to be seen what they can do with their trade exception. Vucevic has been linked to them. Jeremy Grant.
But that's the thing. This happens every single year. We're linked to so many players every single damn year. You know what I mean? Our last year was who? Andre Drummond. It was him again this year. You know what I mean? It was Andre Drummond. And then I can't even think about it. It's like legit anyone. You could legit see anyone cropped in a Celtics team jersey. And it's just frustrating because at the end of the day, I think it's been 4 straight years where the Celtics haven't done anything in the trade right before the trade deadline. Legit every year.
If it was up to me, um, I would rather have not Grant Williams. Sorry, I'd rather have Robert Williams right now than Andre Drummond moving forward.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Andre Drummond sucks. Like he's not good. Let's not like he shoots 50% true shooting percentage this year as a center. You know how bad that is? That's that's pathetic as a center. 50% true shooting percentage, 15.7%, um, 15.6% turnover percentage. Like that's awful. He's sure maybe he can maybe he can rebound for you like come playoff time, but dude can't. He's not. He's terribly like he's awfully inefficient. Like I, I just don't see it. I don't think he's that good, and I don't think it. I think there's a reason that any team he's been on has stunk for the most part in his career.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. At this point, there's not that many moves the Celtics can really make that are realistic and that are going to be good for the team overall. It's just like they're going deeper and deeper into the hole. You know what I mean? Like I said, a few years ago, they were in great shape. LeBron out the Eastern Conference. No, not really that much serious competitors. I mean, Kawhi left too. Like, you know what I mean? Like every single year, there's a great chance. Ben Simmons was out one playoff series. The bubble happened. There's so much chances, but every single year, their championship window is decreasing and waning. I mean, yeah, they still have young players, but to be able to acquire that talent is just it's just the time window is going down, especially with Brown Tatum's contracts going to be able to kick in soon.
Yeah, Tatum's contract kicks in next year,
Yeah.
28, 30, 32, 34, and 37. And
Hmm.
I mean, he's still, what is he now, 23? Right? He just turned 23 like yesterday, right? So, like, he's still obviously very young and he deserves, he is worth that contract because unless something unforeseen happens, like he gets injured, hopefully not, obviously, hope he stays healthy throughout his career. Like, he's going to be worth that contract. But if you're paying Kemba Walker as well, like 40 mil a year for the next 2 or 3 years, and then you're paying Jalen Brown a huge amount, and all those guys are, you could say, worth it. Kemba maybe less than the other two because the other two provide amazing defense and they can obviously score at a high level, but it's just going to be very difficult, like just even after this year, to add to that team, you know, without going over the hard cap or like dipping deep into the luxury tax.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, yeah, there's really not much I can say other than say there needs to be some moves made or just a lot of luck to be involved because at this rate, Celtics might just end up becoming a middle tier team. There's not too much of a difference between them and the Heat or them and the Pacers at this point. They're definitely not on the same level as the Sixers or the Bucks this year.
Yeah, exactly. And the Nets. The Nets are
Yeah,
also
of course,
very
of
good.
course, of course, of
So
course.
yeah, they got to do something. Hopefully, hit a home run with that trade exception, whether it be add some depth around their 4 or 5 top guys, or make a splash for another big addition. But something's
Mm.
got to change. But one thing I do wanna leave you with some positivity about the Celtics. Their 4 best players: Marcus Smart, Kemba Walker, Jalen Brown, and Jason Tatum. You want to take a guess how many minutes they've played together this season?
I'm pretty sure if I could be wrong, but I don't think they've have they even played together. I could be wrong.
So they've only played a grand total of 28 minutes together
Mm,
in that Lakers game, and then Marcus Smart ended up getting hurt.
mm,
So
gotcha, gotcha.
when they get those 4 guys back, they're going to be better than they've been playing. When Marcus Smart comes back and everybody can stay healthy, they're going to become better because they won't have to rely on these end of the bench guys who don't really contribute much, and a lot of the a lot of the pressure is going to be taken off Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown. Um, how much better it makes them, that remains to be seen. But they will be better than how they've been playing. Right now,
I
they're just
will
barely above 500.
I will say one thing. Well, after Marcus Smart got injured and the bench players kind of had to step in, they were not playing great. But after getting a lot more playing time, I will say it's kind of like a blessing in disguise. We've seen some of these guys get a lot more rhythm. Robert Williams, tons of rhythm. Like I said, if he plays tonight, first time in his career where he plays more than 10 games straight, big milestone for him. Samuel Ojale has been shooting at a more consistent rate than ever before. He's been playing more consistently. Peyton Pritchard has been given a lot of responsibility. It's a good thing for a rookie, although he is a 4-year college player. But that just builds some confidence. So maybe it is a blessing in disguise. And when all 4 of these guys are healthy together, that these bench players don't have that big of a role, they'll still be able to come off the bench and contribute meaningful minutes. You know what I mean? But yeah, who knows?
So as of right now, the Celtics are the 4th seed in the Eastern Conference. Um, it's like a whole it's like a whole mash from like 4 to like 9. Uh, it's separated by like 2.5 games. 4th seed is Boston. In the first round, they would play the Knicks. I would take the Celtics over the Knicks in the first round. Is that Would you agree on that?
Easily.
And but then after that, they would probably have to play the 76ers. Uh, I don't know if they can beat the 76ers. With the way they're playing right now,
I
it's
think,
very
yeah,
unlikely.
they need to be healthy in order to be Sixers. They did. I think they did beat them in the regular season. Um, I could be wrong, honestly. Yeah, let me double check that. Now keep going. What we're saying.
No, I was just trying to go through both teams and see what their playoff matchups would look like. So as of right now, the Clippers are tied for the 3rd seed, but since they beat the Lakers, they are the 3rd seed. So in the first round, they would play the San Antonio Spurs. Um, the Spurs, I think they beat the Spurs pretty handily. The Spurs don't really have anybody to defend Kawhi or Paul George. Patty Mills has given the Clippers problems in the past. I know nobody really thinks that Patty Mills didn't think of the Spurs, but they have a lot of young guards who are very interesting. DeJounte Murray's been playing really well. I watched the game versus the Brooklyn Nets where he hit that crazy shot at the end, but he's really improved a lot. So I take the Clippers over them, and then in the next round they probably play. As of right now, they played the Suns. I do you think they could beat the Suns? I mean, I
Like you said, smaller guards. CP. I
Yeah,
don't know,
but
man.
I mean like quick guards. Like Chris Paul is old.
Mm.
Like he's not really like quick anymore.
Nah, honestly, I'm just messing with you. I still think the Clippers are honestly the Suns have been amazing though. I will say that, but I think it's going to be a great matchup, interesting matchup. But I'm just going to be a little bit biased here and put it on the two stars. You know, Kawhi and Paul George. I really that those two together when healthy and surrounded by a healthy team of Patrick Beverly and whoever else, I think that they can just keep consistently winning games. I honestly think their biggest threat right now is probably the Lakers, and other than that, I think they should be fine.
Yeah, I would agree. I just think the Suns are kind of built to stop them. They have Mikal Bridges, they have Jay Crowder, they have Cam Johnson. They have these lengthy wings who can play good defense and hit open shots. And then they got Devin Booker, who I mean, no
Forgot Jay
comment
Crowder
on.
too.
Yeah, no, I said Jay Crowder. Devin Booker, no comment on Devin Booker. He's all right, I guess. Uh, Chris Paul is obviously my favorite player, and the last thing I would want is a Chris Paul revenge series versus the Clippers. That scares me just thinking about it. To be completely honest, um, and then the Jazz. I think the Jazz are good, but I don't know how much I trust
Overrated,
Jordan. I don't know how much I trust Jordan Clarkson come playoff
overrated,
time. To be completely honest, hey man,
overrated.
Donovan Mitchell's a little overrated. You're right, but he's still very good. Um,
Mm,
yeah, man, I don't know how much how much stock I can put in the Jazz being like one of the best. Like I don't even know if they're the third scariest team in the West come playoff time. You know what I mean? I think the Suns have that edge over them too. Maybe.
honestly, I agree with you on that. That yeah. All right. Do you want to end this episode?
Yeah, I think we went on a little too long, but had a solid
Yeah.
discussion.
Yeah. All right. No, I got you here. Let me hit you up with one question before this we end this episode. All right. Do you think that the Celtics will make a move before the trade deadline? Yes or no?
Uh, you know, what, I'm gonna go yes because
Uh,
Danny Ainge even came on the show, came on his like radio show and said that they're not good enough. So I think the answer is gonna be yes.
all right. I'm gonna say no just because there's a lot of external factors. I mean, like after that Isaiah Thomas trade, no one really wants to make a trade like that with the Celtics. But other than that, this is just the same crap that happens every single year. So for that, honestly, I want them to make a trade, but I don't think it's going to happen at the end of the year. At the end of the day, but we're gonna see. But with that, yeah, you want to call it?
Yep. I think we're good for today.
Yeah, well, we will figure this out in a few weeks when the trade deadline comes. With that being said, y'all, appreciate you guys for listening to a podcast. You guys can check us out at the East Coast Broadcast. We're on YouTube. We're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, anywhere you guys listen to your podcast at the Push the Tempo podcast with Aray and Kyle. I'm your boy Aray. It's my guy Kyle. Peace out, y'all.